Hi everyone. In this video, I want to analyze different structures related to the central nervous system that can be identified in transverse sections. So let's start. Okay, there is the first section of the head, of a dog's head, fixed in formaldehyde. What do we see here? We see both cerebral hemispheres, the more rostral part of the cerebral hemispheres. Also, in an MRI, you can see both cerebral hemispheres. Also, we identify the olfactory peduncle here. This is the olfactory peduncle right here, olfactory peduncle right here. We also see the presphenoid bone and with the more rostral portions of the sphenoideal recess right here. Okay. And we see here there are muscles here and other structures as vascular and nervous structures. These are structures of the periorbita, caudal to the eye. Here you see a dissection where you see the eye here and all these structures that are the extraocular muscles, right? With some nerves here. So you see branches of the ophthalmic nerve as the frontal nerve here or the lacrimal nerve here, that this one is innervated the lacrimal gland. And as you see, these muscles are located here. We also see the intra here in yellow, here, the intraperioorbital fat and the extraperioorbital fat. Here on an MRI, you see that's the this hyperintense signal corresponds to intraperioorbital fat, and this one here corresponds to extraperioorbital fat. We also identify here this structure here that is the optic nerve, right? And here we have the other optic nerve. Okay. The next section, we see the frontal sinus here, frontal sinus, and both cerebral hemispheres. Okay, as well on the MRI, we see both cerebral hemispheres and here the olfactory peduncle. Here the olfactory peduncle. At this level, we see the presphenoid bone. Here, this is the presphenoid bone, and again, we see the optic nerves here and the other one, the optic nerves. Where are the optic nerves here? Pues at this level, as you see, very close to the encephalon. Here are the optic nerves here. And also we see some other structures inside the periorbita, as they are muscles here, muscles. And these are these muscles, okay? These extraocular muscles, these ones, okay? But also we identify vascular structures here. And this corresponds to this structure. This is the ophthalmic plexus, the ophthalmic plexus. And as you see, the ophthalmic plexus is located dorsomedially in the periorbita, okay? That is the ophthalmic plexus. This is the optic nerve, right here, the optic nerve. But also, look at this structure, this one here, right here, and right here. This dissection shows you the optic nerve, right here, and also, as you see, ventrolateral or lateral to the optic nerve runs the ventral branch of the oculomotor nerve, this one here. And at mid distance between the optic canal and the caudal pole of the eye, we found this. This is the ciliary ganglion, okay? And the ciliary ganglion is formed by the soma of the postganglionic neurons that are going to form the short ciliary nerves, these ones here, that join the optic nerve in order to enter the eye, okay? They form part of the parasympathetic component of the oculomotor nerve, right? So this structure that I have marked here corresponds to the ciliary ganglion. So on an MRI, we cannot see the ciliary ganglion, but we have to know that the ciliary ganglion is located lateral to the optic nerve. And as you see, and in close contact with the optic nerve. Okay. So let's go for the next section. We see both cerebral hemispheres, and the beginning here, this is the most caudal portion of the olfactory peduncle that is going to become the beginning of the piriform lobe, but is located more caudally, right? And again, the presphenoid bone here, the presphenoid bone, here is the presphenoid bone. And then we see the optic nerve here that is beginning to move towards the optic canal. There is the optic canal. Okay, here. There you have the optic nerves, one and the other one. Okay, and the rest of the most caudal portion of the extraocular structures that are inside the periorbita. And there you have them here, right? And also with some vascular, remember the ophthalmic plexus. As you see, there are some muscles here. This area here corresponds to the most, this is going to be the beginning of the orbital fissure. But you see, these are muscles here that seem to enter the orbital fissure. And remember that the extraocular muscles are caudally attached to the bone that surrounds the orbital fissure. However, there is one muscle that is the retractor bulbi muscle that is formed by four bellies. Here is this muscle here, is this muscle that surrounds the optic nerve, and this is the only extraocular muscle that attaches inside the orbital fissure. So this structure is, this marked structure here corresponds to the more caudal portion of the retractor bulbi muscle. Okay, and we also see that this is a nerve and a vascular structure. This nerve is the maxillary nerve and the maxillary artery here, okay? On top of the medial pterygoidal muscle here, okay? So for the next section, we identify both cerebral hemispheres, right here, as you see, both cerebral hemispheres, and we see the optic nerves. These are the optic nerves right here. And on an MRI, you see the orbital fissure. Orbital fissure. What is the orbital fissure here? So we have it here, the orbital fissure, right here, with the structures. And again, remember, these correspond to the muscle that is the retractor bulbi muscle. And more things here. So we have, again, vascular structures that correspond to the most caudal portion of the ophthalmic plexus that is going to extend through the orbital fissure inside the cranial cavity to become the cavernous sinus. Okay? And also, we have nerves here. We have nerves. Which ones? We have the ophthalmic nerve, the oculomotor nerve, the trochlear nerve, the abducen nerve. And underneath, we have here the maxillary artery. So at this point here, we have the maxillary artery and the maxillary vein. Here, maxillary vein. Okay, and this is the presphenoid bone. The presphenoid bone. So for the next section, we progress caudally, and we see both cerebral hemispheres, this here, this is the caudate nucleus, right here, right? Part of the telencephalic septum, and the optic chiasm. Where is the optic chiasm? Here, this is the optic chiasm. And again, you see this hyperintense signal corresponds to CSF, right? CSF. So the CSF is located around, in the subarachnoid space around the encephalon, right? And we have the sphenoid bone here, and we see this area. We are going to enlarge it here. And this area enlarged is this one here. What do we have? We have a big cavernous sinus, okay? Inside, we also have nerves, structures. Which nerves are? All the nerves that are going to lead through the orbital fissure, okay? And these nerves are the, which ones? These nerves are the ophthalmic, oculomotor, trochlear, and abducen cranial nerves, right? And we also have inside here, we have the internal carotid, this internal carotid artery that is going to form the circulus arteriosus cerebri. As we see in this image here, we see this, the cavernous sinus, right? This is the internal carotid artery. And then we have some structures. I'm going to surround them here, like that. So again, at this level, okay, which are they? This is the abducen cranial nerve. This is the trigeminus, okay. This is the trochlear and the oculomotor, and they are located like that: number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6. And again, what do we see here? Again, we see a nerve, okay, that is right at this level, right? This nerve is the maxillary nerve, this one here, and the maxillary artery. Also, there are some venous structures, okay? Remember, as we go a bit caudal here, that together with the optic nerve, what do we have? We have vascular structures, the internal ophthalmic artery, and some veins, right, that will progress caudally and they will become part of the cavernous sinus. Okay? So, we go caudal. And as we see here we begin to see the third ventricle. Okay, both cerebral hemispheres. This is the piriform lobe here. And then we are going to enlarge this area here. What do we see? We see here we have the hypophysis. The hypophysis formed by the neurohypophysis and the adenohypophysis, right? We are at the basisphenoid bone. So on MRI, we have the basisphenoid bone, and here we have the hypophysis. Identify this is a T2 sequence, and Hayes sequence. So we see the hyperintense signal, that is the CSF, but surrounding the hypophysis, there is not hypointense signal. And this is because the hypophysis is not surrounded by the leptomeninges, so there is no subarachnoid space around it. Okay, So, and then on both sides we have, yeah, we are going to have that. The cavernous sinus, okay, the internal carotid artery, okay, and you see these are all nerve structures, okay. Which nerve structures are? The structures that are going to live through the orbital fissure, they go rossally, and these are the ophthalmic nerve, the oculomotor, trochlear, and adjacent cranial nerves, okay? And also, as you see, we have that here, that is this structure, that is a nerve, okay? This is, as you see here, right here, there we have the alar canal. And what do we have inside the alar canal? We have the maxillary nerve that is a branch of the trigeminal nerve, okay? And this nerve has exit from the inside the cranial cavity through the round foramen. So here we have the round foramen, and this nerve can go through the round foramen to the alar canal, right? And then we have the maxillary nerve and the maxillary artery. Okay, so where do we identify the round foramen? We identify the round foramen at the level of the basal sphenoid bone when we are cutting the hypophysis. So this is the site of exiting of the maxillary nerve to the alar canal. Okay. Okay. And again, see, this is a more rostral, it's more similar, but it's not quite similar because we do not identify the hypophysis here, okay? But we see here, this is these structures that are the cavernous sinus, and here we begin to see the maxillary artery, maxillary artery together with the maxillary nerve. We progress caudally, we have left rossally the hypophysis. So we are beginning to see this. This is the beginning of the dorsum sellae. You see the dorsum sellae here and the dorsum sellae here. This is a T1 enhanced sequence. Or in a dissection, the dorsum sellae. As you see, the dorsum sellae is located between both crus cerebri, right here. These form part of the mesencephalon. These structures are formed by the standing fibers, the pyramidal and cortico-pontine fibers. And on top we have the substantia nigra, okay? So, and then you see, again, you see all these meninges, you see the meninges going here, right? The meninges, the duramata, okay? And then between both layers of the dura, because this is the inner layer and this is the outer layer of the duramata, and in between we have the cavernous sinus. Remember, these sinuses of the duramata are located between the two layers of the dura, the outer and the inner layer. Okay, so we see the cavernous sinus here, cavernous sinus, and what do we see? We see this is the trigeminal nerve, right? And we are at the level, as you see, at the exit. Okay, this is the oval foramen. So we have the trigeminal nerve, and this is the mandibular nerve, because here we are at the level of the oval foramen. So as you see, this is the nerve exiting, the mandibula exiting through the oval foramen that is here. Again, we also identify what is that. This is the mandibular nerve, right? This is the trigeminal, and you see the trigeminal nerve, and this exiting, forming the mandibula. And we also see the maxillary artery. Here in this MRI, we see the maxillary artery at this level. as well as in here. Okay. So what else? Let's progress to the next section. Again, we are at the level of the dorsum sellae, right? This is the dorsum sellae, okay? Or here you have, this is an inside view of the floor of the cranial cavity, where you see here is the sella turcica, right here, where the hypophysis is located. Here we have the dorsum sellae, right? And one optic nerve, the other optic nerve, this is the internal carotid artery that changes direction and goes dorsally in order to form the circulus arteriosus cerebri. And all the cranial nerves, this is the trigeminal nerve, right? This is the oculomotor with the trochlear and abducent more laterally located. Okay, this is the same, but after removing the inner layer of the dura. So we see this again is one optic nerve, the other optic nerve, right? And there you see the internal carotid artery that goes and then goes dorsally and is sectioned. And this is an anastomotic branch that leaves through the orbital fissure, that this branch joins the external ophthalmic artery. And there you have it. Here is the trigeminal ganglion and the trigeminal nerve with all the branches, the mandibular, the maxillary, and the ophthalmic that goes that way. And then we have the oculomotor and the trochlear nerve. The abduction is missing in this. So again, we go here. So we see this, and we are going to compare it with an MRI. So we see the cavernous sinus right here. So we have the outer layer, sorry, the inner layer, the outer layer, and in between the cavernous sinus. And again, as the mandibular nerve leaving through the oval foramen. So we have the trigeminal nerve, and this one is the mandibular nerve. And more medially is the cavernous sinus. We enlarge this area here in this image, and what do we see? The cavernous sinus, right? This is the inner layer of the dura, the outer layer of the dura, the trigeminal nerve here, and exiting, forming the mandibula. And also here, what do we see? We see another nerve, more nerves. Which nerves can this be? Could this be? These, the nerves that they have to go rossally, okay? And they are coming from backwards. Which ones are coming at this level? Well, the oculomotor, but this maybe not, because this is coming from caudally. Maybe maybe it's the abducent cranial nerve. Remember that the abducent cranial nerve of the location, right? The abducent. So these are nerves that are going to live. These nerves that they have to live rossally, right? Let's progress to the next one. And again, we see the dorsum sellae. I think was very similar, but I want you to point out something. This structure here, what is this? Remember, we are at the level of the dorsum sellae. Here is an image with this is the press-sphenoid bone, right? This is the press-sphenoid bone. Here is the basio-sphenoid bone, and then we have the basio-occipital bone. And as you see, this is the sella turcica, where the hypophysis is located, and the dorsum sellae here. So at the level of the dorsum sellae, if we go down, we see this structure, that is this one, or this one here, auditory tube. Okay, this is the auditory tube, right? This is a communication between the middle ear and the pharynx. Okay, let's progress. Again, very similar images. So we are at the level of this is the mesothalamus. So we have here the lateral geniculate body. The lateral geniculate body is this structure here. The middle geniculate body right here. This is the middle geniculate body. Okay, the middle one right here. Okay, the hippocampus, you see it here. And again, it's the same. Okay, the dorsum celli, the cavernous sinus, and the trigeminal nerve, and exiting the mandibular, right? However, in this section, it is not right similar, but well, could be compared both. This structure here corresponds to the trigeminal nerve, as you have seen it before. And as this enlargement of the trigeminal is the trigeminal ganglion or gasser ganglion, also named semilunar ganglion. Okay. We progress caudally, and again, we are at the same level. Remember, this is the medial geniculate body, lateral geniculate body, middle geniculate body. This is mesothalamus. And again here, okay, the lateral geniculate body, the middle geniculate body. And in this section, we are sectioning also the part of the pons. So this is the brachium pontis, or middle cerebellar peduncle, right? And we have, and underneath, what do we have? We have this structure. We are enlarging this image. We have that. This is the ventral petrosal sinus, that is the caudal continuation of the cavernous sinus inside the petrobasilar canal. And look at this. Here we are at the level of the middle ear, right? And this structure here is the carotid canal. And what do we have inside? We have the internal carotid artery. The internal carotid artery. Okay? And something very interesting, it is shown here, is this structure. This structure here, and this structure here. This is the tensor tympani muscle, innervated by the trigeminal nerve, in particular the mandibular. And as you see, this extension of this is the tympanic muscle here that extends and joins this is the manubrium that attaches to the inner layer of the, or inner part of the tympanic membrane, okay, the trigeminal. And what is the trigeminal here? It's in here. This is the trigeminal nerve. This is the trigeminal, and here we have the crista petrosa. So the crista petrosa should be located around here, and this is the trigeminal nerve, particularly the trigeminal ganglion. Okay. So this is a nice one because you see a section at the level of the mesencephalon and part of the pons. So we have the rostral colliculi here, the commissure of the rostral colliculi, the periaqueductal gray matter with the Sylvian aqueduct, and here we have pons. Okay. And again, so we have the rostral colliculi here, the periaqueductal gray matter with the mesencephalic aqueduct, and this is the brachium of the caudal colliculus, and the other one, okay, that connects the medial geniculate body with the caudal colliculus. And again, we see the trigeminal nerve, and particularly this is the trigeminal ganglion. Here you have it, trigeminal ganglion, okay, and the crista petrosa, okay, that the crista petrosa is the roof of the trigeminal canal. So the trigeminal canal is where the trigeminal nerve is going through, and at the end, we have the trigeminal ganglion. And underneath, what do we have? We have here the ventral petrosal sinus. Ventral petrosal sinus. So now we progress, and what do we see? It's not similar, but well, more or less. We see you identify the hippocampus, right? This is the lateral geniculate body here, the middle geniculate body here, the rostral colliculus, the other one, the periaqueductal gray matter with the central canal here inside. Again, the central canal here, okay? Then we have here we have the brachium of the caudal colliculus, and underneath we have the pons. The pons with the brachium pontis here, the brachium pontis or middle cerebellar peduncle. And lateral we have the trigeminus, here the crista petrosa, okay? Again, here we have the brachium pontis, and more lateral here at this level we have the trigeminal nerve. And underneath, what do we have here? Here, or here. This is the ventral petrosal sinus inside the petrovascular canal. And we are going to enlarge that. We are at the level of the basioccipital now. We enlarge this area and we see the ventral petrosal sinus inside the petrovascular canal. And here, this is something I want to show you. It's very interesting because we have the carotid canal with the internal carotid artery. And remember, around the internal carotid artery, we have postganglionic sympathetic nerve fibers coming from the cranial cervical ganglion. And as you see, it's very close to the middle ear, but separated by bone, right? By bone. Okay. What else do we have here? Again, the middle cerebellar peduncle or brachium pontis and the trigeminal nerve. Here is the crista petrosa. Okay, in another section, what you will see here, you see the both cerebral hemispheres, right? Part of the vermis of the cerebellum. These are the caudal colliculi. And here we have the brachium pontis or middle cerebellar peduncle. And lateral, we have the trigeminal nerve. And again, the trigeminal nerve. Okay. So, again, you see that this is cerebellum right here. It's more or less pons here, the pons. And you have the, here laterally, we have the middle cerebellar peduncle, and laterally the trigeminal nerve. Okay. All right. We enlarge this area and we enlarge this area. Here again, what do we have here? We have the ventral petrosal sinus inside the petrovascular canal. Okay, because this is the basioccipital and this is the petrosal portion of the temporal bone. And again, we have the internal carotid artery inside the carotid canal. Here, the carotid canal. And this is the petrovascular canal that contains the ventral petrosal sinus. Okay? And again, you have it here, the ventral petrosal sinus, and more laterally, the carotid canal. Okay? Next section, we see this is done at the level of the trapezoid body because we see these are the pyramids right here. This is fibers of the facial nerve after going around the abducens nucleus, okay, and forming the internal genome of the facial nerve coming from the motor nucleus of the facial nerve, and these fibers exiting under this is the spinal tract of the trigeminal nerve, goes under. Here we have the rurospinal tract, and they go forming the facial nerve, okay? In particular, the motor root of the facial nerve. This facial nerve goes together with the vestibulocochlear, right? Inside the internal acoustic meatus. So on an MRI, you see the pyramids here. This is the basilar artery. Okay, this is the lingula of the cerebellum, right? And you see the flocculus, ventral paraflocculus, dorsal paraflocculus, and the rest of the cerebral hemisphere with the vermis. Okay. Again, you see here we have, what do we have here? Here we have the ventral petrosal sinus. Again, you see the ventral petrosal sinus, and then the carotid canal with internal carotid artery. With internal carotid artery. Here is easy to see. Here we have the cochlea, right? The cochlea of the inner ear, and the bulla tympanica here, the bulla tympanica. Okay. So you see, remember, this is important because we have the ventral petrosal sinus, and here we have the internal carotid artery. Okay. Okay, in this image, it's nice because we are going to compare it with a city. We have the middle ear with the bulla, the middle ear with the bulla here. Okay, and there we have, here's the malleus. So we have the malleus, this is the tympanic membrane, and then we have the malleus right here, here. And then we have the, here, part of the tensor tympani muscle. Okay, what is the tensor tympani muscle? In this, we identify part of the tensor tympani muscle. So here we have the promontory. Remember that at the level of the promontory, there is the tympanic plexus, and we have talked about it in other videos. Okay. Again, the carotid canal, the ventral petrosal sinus inside the petrovascular canal here. All right. This is the cochlea. All right. The cochlea and the cochlear window. Okay. The cochlea. And here you see, this is the facial and vestibulocochlear entering through the internal acoustic meatus, and this is the facial. So the facial goes like that, and then it turns. There we have the external genu of the facial nerve, where there is a ganglion here. Okay, the ganglion of the genu of the facial nerve. And dorsally, at this level, we have the vestibulum of the inner ear, the vestibulum with the semicircular canals. So we progress caudally. We see the medulla oblongata, okay, caudal to the trapezoid body. Because remember, the trapezoid body, as you see, trapezoid body is formed by these transverse fibers here. This is the trapezoid body, okay? This is the trapezoid body. But we have talked about the trapezoid body when we were talking about the brainstem. So the medulla oblongata, right? And again, what could this be? We go progress. Caudally, this one here is this foramen, what is this? This is the ventral petrosal sinus here, the ventral petrosal sinus inside the petrovascular canal, okay, part of the bulla. So this bone is the basio-occipital bone, okay, with the pyramids here, okay, and this is nice because you see part of the extension of the ventral paraflexus of the cerebellum here. Okay. We go caudally, and what do we see? We are at the level of the medulla oblongata, okay, fourth ventricle with the choroidal plexuses of the fourth ventricle that extend outside the ventricle inside the subarachnoid space right here. And this is interesting because what do we have here? These are fibers of the glossopharyngeal and vagus that extend outside, okay, through the jugular foramen, okay, through the jugular. So at this level, we have the jugular foramen. So the fibers of the glossopharyngeus and vagus exit at this level here, okay. And again, this is the most caudal portion of the ventral petrosal sinus, and at this level is going to live through the jugular foramen, right? And they are going to become the the external jugular vein, right? They are going to form the external jugular vein. Okay. And these are for the transverse sinus, okay? The transverse sinus. Interesting, because what you have here, these are extensions of the choroidal plexuses. These are the extensions of the choroidal plexuses that are outside in the subarachnoid space. Again, we see this most caudal extension of the petrovascular sinus before becoming the external jugular part of the external jugular vein. Okay, and again the medulla oblongata with the pyramids. Okay, all right. And at this level, the temporal sinus. We progress caudally. What do we see here? Very interesting, this image. So we are at the level of the medulla oblongata. This is the cerebellum with the paraflocculus here, right? This is the paramedian lobule, right? And the vermis, okay? With the uvula here. And we see, what do we see? We are going to enlarge this image, and we see that these are fibers that are living ventrally, okay, lateral to the pyramids. And these are small roots that are going to form the hypoglossal nerve when it leaves the cranial cavity. These are the roots of the hypoglossal nerve here, okay? And again, this is the sigmoid sinus, the sigmoid sinus. Remember that the sigmoid sinus is this sinus here, okay, that is continuous with the, here is the transverse sinus, with the transverse sinus and the temporal sinus. So here we have the temporal sinus here. And is continuous again with the basilar sinus through the condyloid canal, and continues with the ventral petrosal sinus and the dorsal petrosal sinus here. So we progress and we identify here all these small roots that are going to form the hypoglossal root of the cranial nerve that becomes the hypoglossal nerve right here. And again, this is the continuation of the sigmoid sinus that is going to become the condyloid here, inside the condyloid canal, to form the basilar sinus, and part of the transverse sinuses. Okay, here. Okay. And what do we have here? Here we have the joint, the atlanto-occipital joint. We progress caudally, and we also identify here, again, this image here is the hypoglossal roots, right? We are at the medulla oblongata here, another hypoglossal roots. And then this is the condyloid canal that comes from the sigmoid sinus, right? And is going to become, and inside we have the basilar sinus. And thus we have the transverse sinus here, okay? And the vermis of the cerebellum, okay? This is the vermis, the paravermis, okay? And then this paravermis lobule, right? And part of the cerebellum, these are cerebral hemispheres right here. We identify at this level, as you see here, we have the basilar artery, and then we have the basilar artery here. We progress caudally, and what do we see? We see the basilar artery, is very easy to see here. And here we have the basilar artery. You see how much subarachnoid space we have. This is the vermis of the cerebellum. This is the condyloid canal with the basilar sinus. So the condyloid canal here with the basilar sinus right here. And as you see, we enlarge this area. As we see, this is the subarachnoid space with all these trabeculae of the arachnoid that join the arachnoid with the pia mater. And what do we identify? We identify this structure on both sides. And again, on an MRI as well, right? This is the spinal root of, this is a cord of, or a cord formed by axons, okay? Axons that are coming from the spinal roots of the accessory cranial nerve that is going to enter the cranial cavity through the occipital canal and is joining the cranial roots, okay? This forms part of the accessory cranial nerve, and here they are. We progress more caudally, and we see this big subarachnoid space is quite big, this subarachnoid space, as you see here, okay, with the basilar artery here. Here we have the basilar artery at this level. And again, look at this. This is the accessory cranial root of the accessory cranial nerve. Here you have it, okay, on both sides. This is a long cord formed by the spinal roots of the accessory cranial nerve here. Okay, this one's here and this one's here. And something else. What is this? This is a space between the two layers of the dura, the outer and the inner layer. This is the basilar sinus here. And the basilar sinus is going to become here. This is the basilar sinus here that is going to enter, that is going to go through the condyloid canal, okay? Through the condyloid canal. And then continues caudally inside the vertebral canal, forming the plexus venosus vertebralis internus ventralis. Okay, thank you very much.